Fifth Hour Radio Show.
So, Bruce, take us back in time a little bit. I know you're involved in so many different things, but as far as breaking into the entertainment industry, how did everything kind of fall into place for you?
Well, before I started announcing in the Octagon back about 25 years ago or so, I was running two different companies and doing quite well and living out here in L.A., the land of Hollywood and all that goes with it. But I wasn't pursuing anything then. I met my long-lost half brother, who I never grew up with, who's Michael Buffer, the famous Let's Get Ready to Rumble announcer, the icon and legend that he is.
Yeah.
And I saw him on TV, and long story cut short, we met for the first time, and I sold both my businesses with the epiphany in my head that I was going to make him richer, more famous beyond his dreams, and put him in every area of sports and entertainment outside of what he was already doing in the boxing ring back in the late 80s and the early 90s. And that was my first foray. And from there, I, managed to build the relationships and, go into various areas of sports and entertainment, which was my foray, into it. And then, of course, when I walked into the Octagon for the first time, began announcing with the UFC, and then everything began expanding, beyond that too. So it's kind of like just trial and error, hit and miss, and, getting out there and making it happen.
Now, you've been in the Octagon now for 17, 18 years?
18 years.
Were you approached and offered that position, or was it like any other position or gig? Was there an interview process or, an audition?
No, nothing like that at all. Nothing like that at all. I fought for the job like anybody has to fight for a job. I asked for the job. And I'm a true believer when I teach people motivational speeches and branding and marketing. And the bottom line is that you're never going to get what you want unless you ask for the job. And I knew that when I told them I wanted to announce, I went down to UFC 8 with a fighter who I was managing named Scott the Pitbull Ferrazzo. And my whole premise was not to become a manager of fighters. My whole premise was to take my fighter down to Puerto Rico and convince the owner to let me announce the prelims and show him what I got and start working my way into the Octagon. Well, he did let me do it that night. That was the first time I ever announced. And then they didn't call me back for 6 months. I'm not sure exactly how the time went, but I got a call when I was in the hospital with my mom, who just had a serious operation, and they asked me to be in Birmingham, Alabama in 2 days because they needed somebody to announce UFC 10, and they wanted me to do it. So I managed to make sure my mom was okay and everything, because I would never leave my family's side, and, she was pushing me to go too, and I said, okay, I'm going to go, and I went down and did the show, and I thought, okay, let's, agree to an agreement, hire me, and they didn't hire me. They hired somebody else afterwards, a friend of the producer. And then they called me and asked me to co-star in Friends, and I said, well, I'll do it, and of course I'd love to do it, but I'll do it, but I wanted to talk to him on set. And I talked to the owner on the set on the day of rehearsal, and I said, look, I feel like a girl waiting for a date to the prom. I'm not going to ask anymore. Let's make a deal right now. I want to do every show. I know I can't live off the money you're going to pay me, but it's not about the money. I want to help build the sport. I want to help build the brand. I want to be a loyal soldier and do everything I can because I think this could be one of the greatest things ever in sports. And I've been in martial arts my whole life, so I could relate to the fighting and everything. It was totally down my alley. That was the best poker hand I ever played. And since then, I've announced every show except for 4 shows in the last 17, 18 years.
Now, as far as the UFC is concerned, a lot has changed over the years. From that first time you stepped into the ring till today, have you evolved along with the sport?
Oh, God, yes. Absolutely. I look at those old, the old videos of me when I started, and believe me, I want to put my fingers in my ears and go, yeah, that kind of thing. It's like anything, I don't rehearse. The only training I do is to stay athletic as I am, but I don't rehearse my job. I want to go out and feel the energy of the crowd, get into it, let my passion, come out of me, because, I'm a little different than probably every other announcer in the way I work. Mm-hmm. But it's only because I'm so passionate about what I do. I love what I do. And you can only, if you ask me how many times I've announced, how many nights I've announced, I would tell you that's how many times I've rehearsed. And, of course, everything has an evolutionary process, and hopefully you get better at it,
When you're announcing the fighters, you can tell they're getting pumped up. Does your momentum grow with crowd response?
Oh, you definitely react to the crowd. Announcing in front of 5,000 versus announcing in front of 25,000, there's a big difference.
How do you psych yourself up before going in front of a fired-up crowd like that?
I have my own little ways, it's like inside my head. I just get into my mode before I walk in that octagon. It's just feeding off the energy. It's a second nature thing with me these days. I don't have a set pace or a set routine. I just know that I'm going to go out there and perform, and I know that every time I walk out, I consider every night my first night. I never live on my laurels, so I want to have the most fun and give the best show and hopefully excite the fighters and the fans watching and in attendance as much as possible and hopefully do a good job for them.
Well, you know, talking about going out night after night, have you ever had a time where you had to announce and you weren't 100%?
Sure. I've done the show with the flu, 103, 104-degree temperature. I've done it sick. I've done it post-laryngitis where I just got my voice back the day before. I've done it with a blown-out knee and crapped up back, you know, on and on and on. But the bottom line is that there's an old adage in entertainment. It's called the show must go on. Mm-hmm. And there's another adage I add to that in the UFC, which is the show must go on, and I'm not fighting. I can get through this. Yeah. Bottom line. I got nothing to complain about. Those boys are out there putting their blood, sweat, and tears on the line. I can do this no matter what's going on.
When did your catchphrase, "It's time," originate? And also, were there other phrases that just didn't make the cut?
No, because I wasn't phrase-driven. I wasn't interested in, you know, like every other announcer, trying to copy my brother Michael and, you know, come up with a phrase like "let's get ready to," and it's like I didn't want to be Frank Sinatra Jr. I wanted to go out and I wanted to just create my own style. And in the beginning, I used to say, "It's time to begin the Ultimate Fighting Championship," like that. And over time, it just evolved into the main event because it's not what I say, it's how I say it is the way I look at it. And at that given moment, these guys have been training for 8-10 weeks, whatever the story is. It's now, we've been sitting here for 5 hours watching all the fights. Now it's the main event. I mean, it's time. I mean, this is it. This is what it's all come down to. And the thing about it's time that's so wonderful, in my opinion, is you can put it in front or behind almost any phrase you can come up with or situation, and it fits.
You know, we only have a short amount of time, so I have to jump around a little bit. I didn't know you were a poker player, and a very successful poker player at that. Have you always played poker, or did you kind of get into that when it started becoming more televised?
No, I was playing cash games when I was 14. And back then it was 5-card stud, 7-card stud, and draw. Then Hold'em became really popular, of course, in 2002 when Moneymaker won the World Series. I mean, it really came to the forefront. But I started playing Hold'em in 2005, and Texas Hold'em. And with that being said, I bubbled the final table of my first tournament at the Borgata in Atlantic City when I was doing the UFC there. Mm-hmm. And then I made the final table of the second tournament I was in, which was the World Poker Tour LA Classic, and I wound up on TV playing many of the top, you know, 3 of the top players in the world at that final table. And I was just basically, it got me right there. I mean, I realized that, you know, I was good at it, but I, you know, of course, need to get a lot better.
You know, I imagine going up against people in these tournaments, you're recognized quite a bit. Do you think that gives you an advantage or a disadvantage when you're playing?
It can work both ways. You know, people want to talk, or, you know, they want to take me out and say, you know, I did that. I mean, I'm not the most famous guy in the world, but I mean, in the poker world, you know, you get different, you know, different mentalities at the table. But the bottom line is, it's like fighting. I look at everybody at the table. It's like they're flesh and blood. They got a brain, lungs, and a heart like me. And now I'm going to tear them up and take them out.
Yeah, you know, I imagine. I mean, I was going to ask you: is there times you have to tell people, you know, I'm here to play cards and not talk about the UFC?
Yeah, no, it's okay because I'll use it to my advantage. And, you know, there's moments when you stop talking when you're deep in a hand. But the bottom line is that I respect every fan that's out there. The fans are so great. And the reason we do what we do is because of the fans. So I'll never not sign an autograph, take a picture, or answer a question. As long as people are respectful and not rude, they can always talk to me. I'm not that kind of person that'll turn down people like that. They're too important to the cause. And I want more and more fans to come in.
Have you ever drew a royal flush?
Twice.
Really? Did you?
Once, but not in Hold'em. Once I did it at a poker machine at the airport in Las Vegas, and the other time was in 7-card stud high-low, which is a game other than Hold'em.
Wow.
But that's twice in 40-some years, so you can imagine how hard it is.
How much was the winnings on the poker machine?
The machine was $1, and I think it came to like, it wasn't as much because it was only $1, but it was like $400 or $500, I think.
Wow. Well, that ain't bad. You see, I thought it would be a little bit more with the royal flush, but like you said, it was only $1.
Oh, no, that was, no, excuse me. I'm sorry. That was a straight flush.
Okay.
And not a royal flush, but the royal flush I have gotten twice, but it's been in table games, and it's been, again, in non-Texas Hold'em.
Yeah.
So the pots weren't, you know, they were good size, trust me, but it's not like I took down $20,000.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about your book in this interview. And I know it's been out a while, but maybe a few of our listeners haven't read it yet, and I want them to know what they can expect if they do purchase and read your book.
Well, you know, when I blew my knee announcing George St. Pierre a couple of years ago at the UFC Toronto, which was a big show, I had to go through rehab 3 months later when I got operated on. I was sitting, you know, with that machine making my knee go up and down. And I kept thinking to myself, you know, I've been wanting to write a book. I started, people keep asking me, but now I'm looking at my knee and wondering, am I ever going to be able to announce the same way again? I mean, could this be it, you know? So that was the point that I decided to write it. And I wanted to write it. It's a story of my life, but it's a family story. It's a father-son story, a mother-son story. It's a story of success. It's a story of trials and tribulations of life. I mean, it's motivating. People say they laugh, and there's parts that'll cheer you up, you know, if you have feelings. You know, not everybody knows how to feel their feelings, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, there's violence in it. There's a chapter to all the girls I've loved before. There's stories in there about the UFC that you've never heard about or maybe were tickled on that I go into details about. But all I can say is that I opened up my heart, I put it out on the table, and the wonderful thing is I've gotten pretty much 5-star reviews from everybody that's read it, which is grand and fulfilling for me because it was a tribute to my family as well as a tribute to my life and a tribute to the UFC.
Are you still doing your own radio show?
Yeah, every Tuesday when I'm in town, I try to get it going. It's live at 11 o'clock on the Sure Dog Radio Network, and you can go to my site at bufferzone.net, you know, and find out about my book and about the podcast and everything else there too.
Yeah. So what's coming up for you in the near future? Any big events or poker tournaments? Yeah,
I'm going to play the World Series of Poker here on Thursday, the circuit events in town here in LA, so I'm going to go tackle that. I'm developing the MMA Federation game, which you may have heard about. I don't know if you've ever seen on Facebook, Mafia Wars or Farmville.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, nothing like this has ever been done. I'm developing the mixed martial arts version of that, and I have my development team in London right now and working full-time. It's going to take about a year to develop, but we're going to be releasing at the end of this year.
Well, Bruce, man, I don't want to take any more of your time up on this Sunday afternoon. I appreciate you joining us on the show. It's been an honor speaking to you.
No, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I mean, you know, you got to pat yourself on the back, too, because it's people like you that do these shows and keep the awareness of mixed martial arts and the UFC out there, and I commend you and thank you for that. We're all teammates in this game, and we're involved in one of the greatest sports ever to come around, and it's a lot of fun. So let's just keep having a ton of fun, and all my respect to your listeners and the fans out there, and onward to the next show in the Octagon.
There you go, buddy. Hey, man, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You
I
too.
really appreciate it.
The 25th Hour Radio Show.